Welcome back to some more Himatsubushi. So, where we last left off, he woke up in the hospital due to some injuries, and, well, a lot of things happened. Well, he tried to get to he tried to get to the payphone just to call his wife, and then all of a sudden, the the cord's been cut off. So, I don't know if Rika does it or some fucking kid. Like Satoko would do something stupid like that. But, anyway, let's continue reading. Climbing up to the grounds of the shrine, I could see there were about 3 pavilions set up, with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks from the village, no, the executives of the Defense Alliance, were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as people from the village council drinking while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quite different than any festival I'd ever seen. See? It's quite a boring festival, isn't it? Haha, this certainly doesn't look like a festival. It's a festival that's happened since long ago, but as you can see, it's not like it used to be. As if to chide the old folk, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It was just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival. Haha, I feel sorry for the deity being celebrated here. Give this sorry excuse for a festival 5 or 6 more years, then everybody in the village will start coming. The ceremony will also be done properly, and it'll be a respectable festival again. What she said was not so much wishful thinking as it was the telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she was simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded. Even though it was baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind. I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through a copse of pine trees, a strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had shown me. As it had grown completely dark, the modest lights littered across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery. Looking at it like this, this village seems tranquil. Of course, using that serious, creepy face. She said that with an indifferent look on her face. Just the other day, you said that this village definitely wouldn't be submerged by the dam, didn't you? She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair. Didn't that mean, at that point in time, the minister had already compiled with the demands? No words. She spun around, her gaze meeting mine. But she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I had just said. This case will probably remain shrouded in darkness. Headquarters probably doesn't want trouble from a scandal with the minister breaking out. There's no mistake that they threatened to kill the grandchild. Then, negotiations with the minister were successful, and the grandson was released. The one who saved the grandson was you. I wonder about that. The discovery of that wallet that started this chain of events. That alone was almost too convenient, I think. Ever since the moment the wallet was discovered, I felt something was odd. Oishi said it as well, that the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage, meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, I was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. I felt like they put up quite a fight, but that might have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they couldn't just say, "Here you go," and returned the minister's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized that this was a kidnapping case and were moving in on it. That's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. So the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary. I don't know about these difficult things. Likewise, even for me, I can't make much sense of it. But there's one thing I can be certain of. Huh. It's just as you said. This village won't be submerged. The dam project will soon be over. That wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying, but I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. This village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that I had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I just happened to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived for generations. It might be ignorant to call their desperate resistance an overreaction. I might not really be qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, bureaucracy or whatever, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind. Still, aren't you glad? Why would that be? At the very least, with this, peace will return to the village. To this village. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 or 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that their village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of a dam was still a ways away. But it was no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turned out from beginning to end that it had already all been decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. There wasn't really a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravate an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here, then the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner. Peace? In this village? When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me, but her face remained indifferent, expressionless. And then her eye, oh my God, this is creeping me out. And then her eyes narrowed slightly as she snickered. Even though every year from now on something bloody will occur? Tee Rika-chan, what are you talking about? As the wind blew her hair about, the girl, as if taking pleasure in that I was the only one who didn't know, continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while. You see, in a few years, I'll be killed. Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if her expression that had been cast in shadow was smiling, amused, or resigned. You are? Why? It's a very unpleasant thing, though. It's also probably been decided already. Decided already? Who would decide that sort of thing? I'd like to know that as well. Turning back to face me, she showed me a resolute expression for the first time, and after staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words. There's a lot of people who have no regard for human life. Even if I tell you this, it might not change anything, though. But if you want to erase the specter of death sometimes, like with the reflection of the moon on the water, all you have to do is throw a small stone. I had no idea what she was trying to say. It's just, I had to listen to every word with my body and soul, or at least, that's what I thought. This day next year. Yes, June 1979, on this day. Holy shit, that's early as fuck. On this day, the foreman of the dam construction project will be killed. What? For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean that gruff old man I played mahjong with? be killed. What makes you think she didn't answer? But she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. That wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that was already decided. No, it was as if she was already reporting the results, that sort of expression. After being killed in a gruesome manner, the body will be torn apart and disposed of, murdered and dismembered. The next year, in June of 1980 on this day, Satoko's parents will be pushed to their deaths. Satoko. It was the first time I heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story. It might be an accident, an unfortunate accident. The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with the lifeless look in her eyes. And then, the year after that, this day in June of 1981, my parents will be killed. And then the year after that, the day in June of 1982, Satoko's abusive aunt will have her head split open and die. And then the year after that, this day in the June of 1983, or possibly a few days afterwards, I will be killed. If all the deaths are preordained, then the last one would also be all according to plan. But then whose plan would it be? This village is full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were at the discretion of those who controlled the village. But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. 1983. They never said anything about Sonozaki's family. Happened in 1983. There was no way that the last death would fit in with anybody's plans. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals. But their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. But that last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. The last death would be a merciful one, a handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that? I want to live happily. That's my only wish. Surrounded by my precious friends, spending our days enjoyably. Only that. I don't wish for anything more than that. Rika-chan, I don't want to die. The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. Eventually we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital, it must not be that serious. The girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered, like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one from just before, predicting her own death and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly and lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were the core of an extremist resistance group. Even if it was a shell of its former self, it was a festival where people in the village gathered, so the 20-some odd folk here should have included some of the village executives and other important members. Among those, there was no doubt that there were members that were at the Sonozaki family council in attendance, meaning even if we never met face to face before, there were people here who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why, without even saying anything, it soon became obvious that I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo, drinking while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villagers, and empathizing with the rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished. His grandson was in police custody. Everything was over. I might not have to be put in another perilous situation. To me, they were only my adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there was no reason I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visit this village, would it return to being a tranquil and beautiful place? If that happened, I might be able to take a relaxed walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was the middle of the night. The girl had, at some point, disappeared. It seems that her parents had told her to go home and sleep when she let out a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me as much as they left. I was just here drinking, so I had thought to help a bit with cleanup. However, my help was refused on the grounds that I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Losing the battle against my sleepiness inside the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly, searching for a back entrance until somebody on night duty found and let me inside. Where were you this late at night? Dr. Irie was worried, you know. Sorry for the trouble. I was held up by the people having a festival at the shrine. Oh, they did say something about everybody in the town council getting together for a drink. My condolences. Are your wounds all right? They're throbbing a bit. It's probably because of the alcohol, I think. Oh, that's right. The detective that was with you wanted to get in touch. Oops, I kept Oishi-san waiting. I glanced at the clock. No matter how you looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I'll apologize to him tomorrow over the phone. I returned back to my hospital room and slipped into the bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Still unmade. Wow. Oh, that's no good. I have to turn off the lights. But my weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. Huh. And that's the end of that chapter, from what I assume. That's a short chapter, though. Let's see, I have new tips, Mother's Diary 1, 2, and 3. Prophecy at the beginning. Alright, since I got some little bit of time to squeeze in, let's read some tips. Mother's Diary... What did they didn't even the Roman numerals for it. There was something I didn't like about my child. I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. If they aren't able to feel loved even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to, then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably harder to express with mere words. I just want my child to be average. As long as they weren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. But my child had been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the other kids broke the equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. Again. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it would still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is that if the aforementioned situations happened again, they'd now act in a manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that as a parent. Why were they indifferent about that field trip, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that picture book, but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that bento, but happy about this one? So many same exact questions. The former and the latter in each situation seem exactly the same to me. There was even times when I thought the former one was better. I don't understand that child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teacher always says the same thing, and I would always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband, always the optimist, once said that a young child's feelings are different from an adult's. So if there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I lament his lack of urgency. One day, when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu that my child would enjoy. But she only smiled with a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. On a day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had just hung up as to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down. But she, watching me trying to pick up the laundry in a panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I have been a bad mother. Thinking I should regain her trust, I thought to get it back little by little with some light interactions. Seeing her do some sort of craft work on the veranda, I called out to her. These past few days have been nice and sunny. The air feels nice, doesn't it? No words. That child, with that indifferent look on her face I hated so much, looked up to me for a moment, then without a word, returned to immersing herself in her craft work. Up until now, I would have hit her on the head just for that. I held myself back. What are you making? Is it a doll? A weather charm. That child was using inserts from the newspaper to deftly make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain, but that child in her own way was praying that these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child, for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. Bringing out a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute weather charms from the eaves of the house. Ah ha ha, it's no good, Rika. The heads are too heavy, see? They've become reverse weather charms now. If they're like this, they'll call the rain instead of the sun. When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my shirt as if to stop me. That's because I made them to be upside down. They're fine. But Rika, if they're upside down, they won't be a charm. That calls for a sunny day, you know. I was making a charm for it to rain, so they're fine. I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside of me. I was trying desperately to understand my child. Oh, I see. The morning glories in the garden were starting to get a little wilted from all the sun, so you wanted some rain, right? That child turned to me with an expression that I hated the most. I got bored of the clear weather. I don't understand. I don't understand. I just can't understand that child. And second one. During the family council, she buried herself under Oreo-san's futon again. Oreo-san dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Oreo dotes on her exactly like you would with a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that. Until Oreo-san has said 3 times that it was fine, I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lends an ear to any of my to any of my chittings. Knowing that Uryu-san's standing was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that's unbefitting of her age either. In any case, not only Uryu-san but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day, I was surprised. By chance, on the way back from some shopping, I saw her by herself just outside a candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there, and started eating it. She didn't make any attempt to pay for it, and she didn't even think of looking around. It didn't even feel like she was shoplifting, more like she were brazenly eating snacks that was offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave the ridiculous excuse that he had said it was okay for that child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. How's that even reasonable? That's part of store merchandise. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around, and it began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Farud family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, it was something I heard often from my grandmother. If by chance the child that I gave birth to was a girl, that child would be the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. All the older folk believe she's the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama and spoil her rotten. And not only did they spoil her, but they even told her she was the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama, that she had a divine power, and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody that it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to stop telling her all these strange things. But there was no unrooting the elderly people's deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her and myself, who only scolded her, there was no wonder who she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she had become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt that they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there was no doubt my child would have been cute and normal. And last but not least, the third mother's diary. And let's get this over with. One sunny parent-teacher day, there was a cooking class and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using their kitchen knives, that child was wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on her face, saying it must be a result of learning it at home. Man, she must be doing well with cooking then. I managed to play it off with a vague smile and a nod in response. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them into the pot in the order of which took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy at their child's actions, but in my case it was different. Why? There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice when I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking that, I quietly fell into an unpleasant mood. When I asked, it seemed she could also sew and do the laundry. I had never taught her how to do those, and again, never saw her do it around the house. Be it cooking or sewing or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the elderly villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish when I wasn't looking. And not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Yashiro-sama, and yes, you already told me that. I said as much to my husband, suggesting that we should keep our child away from the elderly folk. But my husband, who was in the position of being the head priest of the Farud shrine, had little power against the elderly who supported it. He took the rather uncommitted stance of saying that as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that. that she was our child and should be a completely normal girl. That what the elderly were expecting, that she was the living incarnation of a Yashiro-sama, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believed that child has divine powers. We would discuss the weather for the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. What the heck? Discuss the weather for the following day. Maybe what Rika said was right, that means because she wanted rain, rather than having clairvoyance that was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. The things that she knew that she shouldn't have known were just a result of the people who were trying to indoctrinate her and the people who were gossiping getting together in the village. However, there certainly were days when everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day, and that child would stubbornly not go out without an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end, we would be saved. There might also have been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought that she must have heard it break over the radio or something. Knowing things she shouldn't have, something like that, was in front of me right now, wasn't it? That child was making curry rice when there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how to. No, that couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody had taught her, indoctrinated her. When I wasn't taking care of her, somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something. Fururu-san's curry is absolutely splendid. I'll give it a gold star. Nippa! Where did you learn to cook, Fururu-san? At home? Yes, at home. The other parents in attendance were impressed. Lies. All lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal average daughter, not the living incarnation of a Yashiro-sama. And that's... let's see, Detective Himatsubushi. Yep, all the tips is apparently red. So, I assume that was all for that one. Alright. So, that was the end of Chapter 5. And alright, also, hold on a second. So, okay, looking through the achievements and on the Steam game. So next part, we're going to move on to what I assume will be the last part, aka the last chapter of the game of Himatsubushi. So like, comment, and subscribe, and stay tuned. Have a good one.